That gives me an opportunity to see what we're working with. So welcome. Firstly, thank you for joining us on this webinar on how to achieve smooth and sustainable results with outsourcing. And we're talking about smooth, achievable and sustainable long-term growth. And look, there's a particular reason why I wanted to pick that topic. And I think I might have mentioned it in the actual registration copy or content there, that I think there's a really massive emphasis on fast growth, but I do believe genuinely fast growth can be dangerous. So what we're looking for is smooth, sustainable growth, and obviously how to use outsourcing for that. So firstly, again, welcome to the webinar this morning. My name is Simon Bell. I'm the CEO and co-founder of CEO. And just a little bit of background, that other lovely lady there is Jessica Graham, who is the co-founder and chief operating officer of StaffBerry as well. And we founded StaffBerry just a little over 2 years ago now, with the intention, pure and simple, to make a difference to small business owners. A little bit of background for myself. I've been in the consulting and coaching background or space for a little over 8 years. And in that time worked with over 1,000 small business owners and their teams, worked with a number of household names. And I've always had a passion for small business, having been a small business owner for the past 12 years, had a range of businesses and so on and so forth. So, the reason we started StaffBerry was purely out of a need, and probably the biggest need that I've ever seen or heard consistently come up amongst small business owners. And the number one pain point or frustration is a lack of time. So that's why we launched it. Primarily, our mission is to sell time, to allow business owners to buy back the time to focus on the things that truly matter to them. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in more depth first up on this webinar. So just for those that, Jenny, some sound keeps breaking up. How's that? Is that better? Just let me know whether that's better there. And it's interesting. I was literally about to say, if there's any questions at all, let me know in the chat room. So Jenny, if that's, how's that sound now? Could actually be my microphone scratching on my beard. Just common. Sounds keeps breaking up. Interesting. Okay. Just rebooted and seems okay. All right, awesome. Excellent, fantastic. All right, good stuff. Well, thanks for letting us know that, Jenny. I appreciate that. So as you can see on there, I'm not sure whether you can actually see it or not, but on the right-hand side, there is a space for asking questions and some chat. I'll do my best to answer any of those questions as they come up. We've got a combination of existing clients as well as potentially new clients, I'm assuming, given that I don't recognize their names or email addresses. So it's a combination, and really, my intention here is to give you some insight into an overall strategy, an outsourcing strategy. It's not a pitch. I'm not going to, ask for credit card details at the end or anything like that. This is purely an information-rich webinar designed to give you some insight into how to utilize outsourcing, which is a bit of a buzz at the moment in the space, and not the primary reason why we started the business, obviously, but there is a lot of opportunities and companies out there providing services for outsourcing staff, and particularly offshore outsourcing staff. So if you're an existing client and you're on the webinar, welcome. Thank you for taking the time, and I'm committed that you get a truckload of value to assist you in managing your existing StaffBerry assistant. And if you're new to StaffBerry, welcome to StaffBerry. And if you've got any questions about anything I cover today, please shoot them in the box there. I do tend to get in the zone or in flow. So if that's the case and I miss your question for a little bit, I apologize. I'll try and come back to it at the end. Okay, so I've done a little bit of background there. And again, please let me know if there's any technical challenges that you're having during the webinar. The opportunity of outsourcing. I just want to say, I genuinely believe that there's never been a better time to be in business. I really do believe that. With the access that we have to technology and global human resources right at our fingertips, I don't think there's ever been a better time to be in business. If you're creative, and there's a real opportunity for small business owners right now, for those that are thinking outside of the box, and I really mean that, for those thinking outside the box, let me rephrase it in this way. For those business owners and entrepreneurs that are prepared to have a look at different ways, new ways, explore new opportunities of building and expanding business, there is no limit to their success and potential. There really is resources available to assist you in building a business by design versus one that you're going to get by default. And it just takes that little bit of creativity and a little bit of outside the box thinking to be able to achieve that. So I genuinely believe there's never been a better opportunity if you're open and willing to explore new and exciting and different ways of building your business, both with technology and with access to really a global pool of human resources. One of the things that comes up regularly, and this is one of the common questions I get asked when doing interviews, whether it's for podcasts or radio, the three common mistakes. What are some of the common mistakes that people make when they get into outsourcing or when they start looking at outsourcing? And I believe that the three common mistakes are: number one is people think that it will be a plug and play solution. They feel that they've heard so much buzz, and there are other outsourcing companies out there that talk about it being such a simple process or simple to do, but it's not. It's never going to be a plug and play solution. We're talking about human beings here. We're talking about people that we're talking about people fundamentally, and the complexities that come with any form of human relationship. So it's not going to be a plug and play. It's going to take some strategy. It's going to take some design. It's going to take some effort, but the rewards far outweigh that effort in the long term if you're prepared to create a strategy and look at different ways of building your teams. Sorry, I just got a question there. Jenny obviously wants to keeps wanting to refresh and goes mute. Okay, cool. If there's too much challenge there, this will be recorded and will be available. So it may be the internet speed, whether it's on my end or your end. I'm not sure exactly what that might be, but there'll be an opportunity to watch the replay on YouTube at a later stage too. So I apologize for the technical challenges there, but if there will be an opportunity, if it keeps playing up, there'll be an opportunity to rewatch that over the next couple of days as well. Okay, so three common mistakes. Think it'll be a plug and play. Insufficient screening and onboarding process as well as training process. And this ties in with the plug and play solution. There are a lot of websites out there that you can hire your own remote staff. You can hire your own assistants, which is great. And if you're confident in recruitment and HR and you've got the time and the energy and the inclination to be hiring your own offshore team player, then by all means, you should definitely do that. One of the common traps, though, or mistakes I find with small business owners, and really part of the major horror stories that I hear with people is that hiring the wrong type of rushing into the hiring process. And look, that's across the board. That's whether or not that's here in Australia or offshore, it doesn't really matter, but just rushing the process, finding someone that they think looks good as opposed to doing their due diligence and doing the screening properly. And to give you some perspective, and again, this is not a pitch, this is just going to give you some stats. Every new position or new placement that we take, we place, we get an average of 100 to 150 applicants per placement or per opening. Now, out of that, we present the top two. So if you think about it, that's the top, 2 to 1.5% of people that we're actually presenting for interview, and we're screening that many. So if you feel you've got the time and energy to do that, then you should definitely go ahead and do it. But it does take, or it can take, I should say, not necessarily like it's a hard and fast law, but it can take a lot of energy to find the right team players. Now, when it comes to onboarding, this could be a term that's relatively new for some of you, hopefully not new to our StaffBerry clients because it's part of our StaffBerry University videos, but onboarding is the process of really the first week of their employment and making sure that they're set up for success from the very beginning. Where I got this concept from, and the reason I believe in it so rigorously is I do have a good friend of mine who used to be a recruit instructor in the Army, and I was talking to him about his job and what they do and the process of training a new soldier, and the conversation that he had was about how the Army breaks down our 12-week block of time into incremental, hourly blocks or 45-minute segments to train, or to really, at the end of that 12 weeks, to be able to produce a soldier. And it was a great demonstration of the rigor that they put into producing really a candidate or an employee, fundamentally, if you relate to it like that, that is of a certain standard. Now, I'm not saying that you need to be that rigorous with your onboarding process, but it is surprising to see so many small business owners not actually prepared for the first week of a new team player's employment. Now, if we're talking contractor here, you're talking freelance, and I'm not really going to get into the difference between freelance and permanent staff. For most part, in the context of what I'm going to be talking about today, guys, just an FYI, is going to be more about permanent positions as opposed to freelance work. But having said that, even if it was a freelancer, really spending or investing the time, I should say, in setting them up for success in that first day, 2 days, possibly even a week. If you're hiring someone on a full-time or permanent basis, or even a part-time permanent basis, actually investing a substantial amount of time in that training process, in that onboarding process. And of course, that then leads into training ongoingly, having a look at what you're doing to be proactive with your training, as opposed to what's traditionally is a break-fix model. A break-fix model relationship to training is that people, they'll find a team player that has a particular challenge or is not skilled, only when they stuff up, only when they make mistakes. And then they'll fix it or they'll train them on it. And what the break-fix model does, in other words, they make a mistake, they get trained on it. What that does is it actually leaves people with this experience. Like, training is a negative, has a negative context. When are you ever getting trained? When I've stuffed something up, as opposed to a proactive context of, looking at what can we train them over a 4-week, 6-week, 12-week process. So, and being proactive about that. So yeah, anyway, that's mistake number 2. And then making assumptions would be definitely the third mistake that people make when they're outsourcing. And what I mean by that is, the best example I use is, if I was to ask you to describe the color purple, how would you describe it? And there are that many different shades of purple that, some of the mistakes that people make when giving instructions or, setting their assistants up, their offshore staff up with tasks, is making an assumption that what you say is what they're actually hearing. Now, we're talking about different cultures. We're talking about different, languages. For some of the assistants, that English may be, a close second language, but still a second language nonetheless. Making assumptions in your communication is one of the common pitfalls that people do. By the way, again, that's not unique to offshore staff or outsourcing staff. That's not unique at all. I do lead an advanced leadership mastery program for a company here in Brisbane. And, that's a common mistake that people make here with their in-house team, is making assumptions on instructions and not actually investing the time to explain things effectively. So look, hopefully you got something from that. If nothing else from the webinar, there are some great takeaway points in there, even if I do say so myself. But really, I want you to just to remind yourself of the 3 very, very common mistakes that people make when outsourcing. All right. So as I said in the start, and I know I'm speaking extremely fast, but I am mindful of time. I did want this webinar to go around half an hour, 30 minutes. I find that that's pretty much as long as people can take to stare at a computer screen. So I want to make sure I get as much content in there as possible. And of course, you've got the opportunity to re-watch this video over the next couple of days on Google Live. So yeah, I wanted to talk about creating an offshore or a /outsourcing strategy, as opposed to what we call at StaffBerry, throwing a human at it. And it's a bit of a funny terminology, throwing a human at it. But I find that business owners, and if you follow me follow StaffBerry on Instagram or Facebook, or you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll hear me talk about reaction versus proactive mindsets, reactive versus proactive. And I've even already mentioned this in the training aspect. But I find that, for those that are in a constant reactive state, when they come up against being time poor or being challenged, it can be very reactive. And what people default to might be just throwing a human at it, throwing somebody at it, at a set of tasks or problems for them to fix it, and kind of then abdicating responsibility around that. That can work. It can be messy, and sometimes maybe that's all that you've got available, the opportunity you've available, or at least that might be the only thing that seems like the only opportunity it seems like you've got available to you. But I implore you, and this is where the long-term sustainable and smooth growth comes in, is actually relate to outsourcing as part of your business strategy. I can't emphasize that enough. Relate to it as part of your overall business strategy. So this is where I really want you to start to do the critical thinking about what you want to achieve as a company, as an organization. What's your vision for the business? And relate to outsourcing as a tool, no different to buying or investing in a CRM, a customer relationship system, or a workflow system. Any other business strategy, it takes a holistic approach to it. So to start off the conversation with creating your outsourcing strategy, I want to talk about the 3 frames of business. And what I mean by frames is how are you viewing, or how is business occurring to you right now? And I believe there are 3 particular frames of reference. Those 3 frames of reference, one is world domination. So you might be in a space right now in business where you don't really care how many hours you work, to be honest. Like you don't really care. You enjoy the process of building. You enjoy the hustle of business. You don't mind working 60 or 70 hours a week, but you've got this vision of, and I like to call it world domination. It may not necessarily be world domination as far as building a global business is concerned, but it's about building, or dominating your world or your market or your local area, whatever that might be. But you've got this hungry vision for building a business quickly, profitably, and building something that you're really proud of, and you don't mind what effort it takes. Okay, so that's frame number 1. That's what I call world domination frame. And if that sounds like you, that's perfect. By the way, there isn't a right frame of reference, just to be really clear. There are just frames of reference. And whichever one you fit in, I want you to kind of use this as the foundation of creating what should be your overall business strategy, to be perfectly honest. But it should also then be the foundation of creating your outsourcing strategy. All right. So world domination is frame 1. Frame 2 is a bit more balance. Okay. You might have been in business for a while. You might have been in business for, say, 10, 15 years, 5 years even. You might have a young family, and you're overworking 60, 70, 80 hours a week. You might even be overworking 40 hours a week. Your time now is just to take some, where your headspace is you want to just take a step back. You want the business to still be profitable. You're not really interested in world domination, so to speak. You're not really interested in building an empire, or you may have already built an empire, and now it's your time to enjoy, the rewards or the fruits of your labor. And as I said, you generally find this when you've got, whether it's mums and dads with young families that want to just spend some time at home, or more time at home, rather than working, those ridiculous amounts of hours. So that's frame 2. Now, frame 3 is I'm starting to see more and more of, and that's a combination of both. That is that you want world domination. You want to dominate, and you want to build an empire, so to speak, whatever that is, whatever definition that is for you. And at the same time, you want to do that in a way that doesn't sacrifice lifestyle. Okay, and that's the combination of the 2 frames, and I'm actually seeing more of an emergence of that amongst entrepreneurs, and I'm excited by that, the emergence of that, purely because people are now seeing that as possible. Whereas previously there was, the narrative or the conversation was that didn't, that wasn't possible, and that didn't, wasn't realistic, so to speak. But it's definitely realistic, as I said before, with the access to technology and global resources, if that's the strategy that you want to fulfill on. Okay, so just a refresher: world domination, or building an empire. Number 2 is that balance, or that fusion of work life, that synergy there. Where you want to spend more time doing the things that are truly important to you outside of business, and then there's the combination of the 2. Okay, so I'd be interested to see if any comments there on the right hand side for those that can identify which one they would relate to the most. But please let us know in the box. I'd be interested to find out. Okay, so that's the foundation of your strategy. That then ties in with these 3 questions, or three kind of questions or statements. Number one is beginning with the end in mind. So you've got your frame of reference, but now let's be really clear on what it is that the vision for the business might be. What does that look like? Is it a world, is it an international business? Is it a local business? Is it national? Is it state-based? How many team players do you see? What sort of revenue do you want to do? Actually creating a vision for the business. Number two is, how do you define success? So what does success look like? And this is, again, ties in with the frame. So you've got the end game of the business. How do you then define success inside of that? And that obviously then ties in with this third point. And an exercise that I'm inviting you all to take on over the next 48 hours, if you haven't done this already. And if you're a client of mine from a coaching perspective and you're on this webinar, you've done this exercise with me before. And if you haven't, then you should definitely do that. And if you're not a client and you don't know me from a bar of soap, that's fine. I really implore you to take on this exercise. And the exercise is defining what your ideal workday looks like. Because a lot of the times we know what we don't want, and very clear about what we don't want as far as a work day is concerned. We know we've had a stressful day, we know we've had a crappy week, or whatever you want to however you want to describe it. But what does your ideal work day look like? What does it look like? And I've run a number of business programs on the Gold Coast, and it's interesting. One of the common themes there, obviously, with the beautiful sandy beaches that are there on the Gold Coast, as an ideal work day starts with a surf and a coffee and some breakfast before the work day. We could work in inverted commas starts. That seems to come up quite a bit. So the surf in the morning, some great breakfast on the beach, then go and attend to some strategic aspects of the business. And do a bit of training with the team and finish up to pick the kids up in the afternoon. Some of you that you may not relate to that in the slightest. For me, that sounds like an amazing day, and one that's not dissimilar to the day that I'm currently, operating from. Except I don't surf; I mountain bike ride. For those that aren't familiar, but really sitting down and looking at what your ideal workday looks like, and use that as an exercise to be able to build your strategy. Next part of this creating your outsourcing strategy is designing an organizational plan, defining the key functional areas, and then listing out all the tasks. Now, this ties in as an exercise as part of you defining your ideal day. If you have a look at what are the things that you as a business owner want to do, and then what are the things that you're currently doing that you want to get off your plate, okay, so that you can obviously live that ideal or experience that ideal work day. But to do that, you need to design that in the context of an organizational plan. And from that, if you don't know what I mean by an organizational plan, that's an organizational structure where you've listed out all the key functional areas of the business. Now, what is a key functional area? A key functional area is a department or a function within the business. And regardless of if you're listening to this and you're a sole trader, in other words, you're working by yourself, or you've got two people on your team, or 3 people, or 5 people, it doesn't really matter how many people on your team. Despite the number of people on your team, there are certain functions that need to be performed in your business for it to succeed and for it to be successful. Simple. There are sales functions, there are marketing functions, there are operational functions, there are admin and accounting functions. There are major functions or departments within every business, regardless of its size, that needs to be performed. Now, the secret to smooth and sustainable growth here, guys, is once you've identified what those functional areas are and listed out all the tasks, it's then having the ability to start hiring people to fill certain roles within that organizational structure or that organizational plan. Now, the smoother and faster you can have people fill positions within that organizational plan, the smoother and faster that you'll grow. It's really that simple. Okay, so now why, as I said before, the opportunity of outsourcing, why I love that so much is because you've now got ease of access. You've now got, it's a lot more cost effective to be able to build and scale a team faster and smoother because you're not having to now wait for your cash flow to be able to justify a $60, $70, $80, $100,000 wage. Based here, you can grow and expand smoother, faster, and more sustainably. Okay, but it's got to be done in the context of your organizational structure or your plan. So what that would look like is you'd map it out, all the key functional areas. sales, marketing, HR, operations, so on and so forth, then you would list out all of the tasks that you're currently doing or need to be done in each of those functional areas for your business to be able to fulfill on and grow and expand to be the business that you want it to be, the size that you want it to be, the vision that you want to see it fulfilled on. Listing out all the tasks, and I call this like a bit of a brain dump, dumping out all of the key tasks of all of those key functional areas that you know need to be performed on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis. Okay. And then from that, you're going to be allocating those tasks to certain positions. Now, I'm not going to spend a great deal any more time on this, but if you want to, one of the things I will offer you for those that are on the webinar is an outsourcing consultation with one of our outsourcing consultants who are highly trained in designing these organizational plans. So if you'd like to take me up on that offer, you're more than welcome to. But fundamentally, what you're doing there is you're creating a series of position descriptions. And how you want to relate to those position descriptions is that when you map them all out, if you laid them all out on the table, inside of those position descriptions are all of the tasks that need to be performed on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and ensuring that all of those tasks are allocated to a position. Now, as I said, you might be thinking, oh, well, it's just me at the moment, and potentially it's just going to be me and someone else over the next 12 months. That's fine for now. But if you want to scale, those tasks still need to be performed. And so what you might find is that you, and maybe that you plus one or you plus two, whoever it might be, may need to hold, I'm going to say hold in inverted commas, hold multiple positions within that organization. So you might be the sales manager as well as the business development manager, as well as the operations manager, as well as the whatever. It doesn't matter how many you hold in those early stages, obviously, because your revenue and your growth is going to be consistent with that. But as you expand and grow, your mission, and this is something that I'm really passionate about, is to always be looking for what's the next hire. And I want you to write that down if you haven't already. What's your next hire? Who is the next person in the organizational plan that we're going to hire? And that could be, in country, it could be internally, or it could be offshore, or it could be outsourced in Australia, it could be outsourced offshore. It doesn't really matter where it is, because the position itself is going to determine where that position kind of can and can't be. Obviously, if they're a salesperson here and it's client facing, you're not going to be able to outsource that overseas. But you want to always be asking, once those position descriptions are defined, what's our next hire? And that's how you grow and scale. And by the way, just as a side note, if you haven't got a good accountant or financial someone like a remote CFO or a bookkeeper that does strategy as well, sing out and let us know, because we've got access to some amazing contacts here. Lisa Lenz will be one of them. And, someone like that would be able to sit down with you and look at your financial projections and your cash flow and your profitability and give you some advice about when would be a good time to hire that next person. All right. So just as a kind of a disclaimer there for me, I don't want you to go and rush out there and hire 1,000 new team players tomorrow and not be able to afford that either. So it's a nice balance between being proactive about what's your next hire and then having some great triggers in place, financial triggers in place to say, right, when our revenue hits X, that's when we can actually afford or when it would be financially viable or make sense to hire this next team player. Okay. Just to assist you in that process, I've got 2 key questions, and I want you to write these down and answer them in your own time. And this ties in with your ideal day. Number 1 is, what tasks am I or my team performing that is not a valuable use of my time? Now, you might look at those position descriptions and assume that, yeah, that's a valuable use of that particular team player's time, especially if you've got people here in Australia. I want you to ask yourself the question, what tasks on that list am I currently performing that is not a valuable use of my time? Okay. In other words, where can if I got these particular tasks off my plate, I could go and spend more time elsewhere, which obviously ties in with number 2. Question 2 is, what important tasks am I or my team not doing because we're stuck doing other things? Okay, guys, if you get nothing else from my ramblings on this webinar this morning, answer those questions. In fact, 2 things I want you to do: define your ideal day and answer those 2 questions. And from that itself, I'd be interested to get your feedback. More than welcome to email me directly, or give me a buzz. I'm available. I'd be interested to see what comes out of those two exercises there. Okay. All right. So as part of, and we've talked about this already, a part of making sure that you've got sustainable and smooth growth, you want to make sure that you're setting up the foundations for performance. And we have a saying that clarity of expectations is the foundation to high performance. And where that comes from there, guys, is just me reiterating the importance of having clearly defined roles or position descriptions. And if you're in this conversation about looking at hiring freelancers to do your outsourced work, having clear briefs and responsibilities for that freelancer as well. Okay, clarity of expectation is the foundation to high performance. If you're on this webinar and you're an existing StaffBerry client, reviewing your position descriptions on a regular basis, reviewing the expectations that you have, and making sure those expectations are clearly communicated. And that will give you the opportunity then to manage performance and enhance performance. Next point I want to raise is just hiring for success. Hiring for success. So let's just do a quick recap. If you look at, you defined your ideal day, you defined your end game, you've mapped out your organizational plan and structure, regardless whether it's just you in the business or you've got a team of 12. There is a structure and a plan there around how the business looks. From there, you've listed all the tasks, and you've allocated all of those tasks to specific position descriptions, okay, to ensure you've got clarity of expectations to set yourself up for high performance. So I hope you're starting to see all this kind of link together and come together. I hope you are. Once you've got those position descriptions, it's then and only then, and as I mentioned before, then do you go to market and start looking for those people or for the right candidates to fill those positions. And you can see here, guys, that it's the very antithesis of quote unquote throwing a human at it. You've done a lot more planning, and I hope you're kind of getting this message loud and clear as part of this webinar. You've done a lot more planning about how this next person coming on board is going to fit in the overall company structure and is going to assist you in fulfilling on your vision, both personally and as a company. Sourcing, screening, and interviewing and onboarding is the next step. Okay, knowing where to find. Now, as I said in the early start, this is not a pitch, so I'm not going to pitch you on, you should use StaffBerry or what have you. There are dozens of services out there that will assist you in the sourcing and screening and even pre-interviewing process. But if you decide you want to go it yourself, that's totally fine. But please invest the time to do it properly. Please have the systems, know where to look, and you can start Googling stuff, I'm sure. But there are certain places, even. And when it comes to sourcing, even countries, guys, when you're looking at outsourcing, countries and even regions within that country, just be mindful that, that there are certain areas of the world that aren't like Australia. I know that sounds like obvious, and I don't mean to be condescending. But, a lot of these countries that people are outsourcing to or hiring from are developing nations and do have pockets of areas that aren't as good as others. Okay, so knowing where you're sourcing from, and then the sources of candidates, the pool of candidates, where do they come from? Screening them. How do you then screen them? Make sure you've got a screening process and a quick screening process. All right. We do this, obviously, and companies like StaffBerry will do it all for you. Obviously, you're going to pay for it. There's an investment there for doing it, but it's going to save time, lots and lots of time. Interviewing. Plan out your interview questions based on the position description. Fundamentally, guys, what you're doing here is you're asking questions to determine 100% that this particular candidate is going to be the best candidate to fill that position. And I would be asking example-based questions. And an example-based question would be, hey, look, give me an example of where you have done X. And X would be in relationship to one of the key points that are on in the position description, and keep asking questions and make sure they're open-ended questions so you can get a sense of is this particular person going to be the right fit for that role? Okay. And I could lead there's full university degrees on this particular subject here. So I'm not going to spend a great deal of time on it, but make sure you've got your interview process. And I've already talked about onboarding. What does the first week look like? What does the first day look like? What does the first month look like? When are you doing your reviews? Do you do a review at the end of the week? What stuff? One point I want to make here, just because they're outsourced, and in this particular context, we're talking about outsourced overseas, and they're at a cheaper rate, please don't relate to them any differently. And please, I implore you, don't put any less effort into training and onboarding your team player. I think it's a very common mistake that people make, is that they relate to their offshore or their outsourced team player differently, because they're not as much of a financial, there's not as much as a financial commitment. So, the actual benefit, one of the benefits of outsourcing can actually be the trap in itself as to why it doesn't work. People say, oh, well, if I was spending, and if you've done this, you might be guilty of this. And the reason I know this is because I was guilty of it. I've been outsourcing to the Philippines for 10 years, off and on for 10 years. And in the early days, I did relate to it like that. If I was investing $2,000 a week into, or $1,000 a week into somebody, there would be a whole world. In those early days, a lot more rigor would go into the training and the screening because there was a lot more at stake. And I think I had the suspicion that that's more common than people think, is that because they're not necessarily investing as much money in wages, that there's not as much at stake. And then therefore that leads into, training not being as rigorous, and, not as much time invested into getting your team player to a stage that is of a high performing level. That is a mistake. Please map that out and invest time in training them, both for your internal staff as well as your external staff, your outsourced staff. And there you go. Train, and have systems to support. Keep investing in training. By the way, that doesn't take a long time. I might be thinking that I read a really cool article last night from Ken Blanchard, who wrote The 1 Minute Manager. And yeah, it talked about how long do you feel that training is going to take, and people's misconceptions that training, coaching, and mentoring staff or team players is going to take a lot longer than it actually does. It doesn't have to if you're intentional, you're proactive, and you're not reactive about it. Communication will be the make or break. Clarity in communication, clarity of expectations, make them part of the team, and you get what you tolerate. So the first 3 points, and I'm going to start to wrap this up, guys. We've already talked about clarity of expectations being the foundation of performance, being really crystal clear in your communication with what you expect. That ties in with you get what you tolerate. I get people, clients that come to me and they say, oh, look, there's, Mary J has been, being late 3 days this week. 15 minutes late, 15, okay. And, the question I ask is, well, did you have the conversation on day one? Well, no. Okay, why? All right, so, and how long has this been going on for? Well, actually, it's been off and on, and we've kind of had this 10 to 15 minute lateness kind of conversation, experience for the last maybe couple of weeks. All right. Have you had a conversation? No, I haven't. Guys, I implore you, you get what you tolerate. It doesn't mean you have to be a jerk about it. You don't have to be rude or, an ass. But be really clear in what's expected of your assistant or your offshore team player, even if that is a contractor or a freelancer. Be clear on what you expect from their communication, from their output, from their levels of work levels or key performance measures, whatever it is. Be clear on that, and you get what you tolerate. If you haven't read the 1 Minute Manager, by the way, or the new 1 Minute Manager, I highly, highly, highly suggest that you do that. There's a really great exercise in there about the 1 minute reprimand, about how you can hold people accountable and change their behavior, alter their behavior in a very quick form, and make them part of your team. If you are looking at employing someone, an offshore team player, an outsourced team player, on a permanent basis, full-time or part-time, which I highly recommend you do, by the way, because that's where you get the best, the best value for that. Make them part of your team. One of the things that we do, and in the next webinar, I thought about this morning. Actually, I'm going to get a picture. I took a screenshot. Every once a quarter we do our quarterly strategy sessions, and if we're not over in the Philippines, which we get over a little bit, if we're not over there, generally we'll do a Friday, and for lunch we'll do a beer and pizza. Now, beer and pizzas, really simple concept. We order beer and pizzas and have them delivered to their houses. Now we all work remote. We have a team that's all remote. It's all home based, and so all of the beers and pizzas got delivered, and I was call it $20 each for a 6-pack of Red Horse for those that are familiar with the Philippines, and a pizza, and so we all as a team ate and had a couple of beers together, even though that I was in Brisbane, Jess was on the Gold Coast, and our StaffBerry team was spread right across Metro Manila, some in Davao, and in different parts and different regions of the Philippines. Make them part of your team. Invest in that. Guys, I think this is a weakness that most business owners have, is they get so serious and so caught up about so busy being busy, that they forget that if you don't invest in your staff, if you don't build a team, you're actually creating more work for yourself. You're not going to, it's a false economy by working harder and not, and relating to team building and investing in team culture as something else to do. That should be one of your priorities, is building that team environment, that team culture. Make them part of your team. Have them in your team meetings on a regular basis. You have team meetings. Invite them remotely on screen. I've done it where we've had the big projector screen, and all their faces have been up there, and we've been on video cam, and it just works. It just works. So I can't stress that enough. All right, so just to wrap up, and I did go for 45 minutes, and I've got a couple of minutes for questions, so I appreciate your time. But what I wanted to offer you is a 60-minute complimentary outsourcing consultation with one of our outsourcing consultants. That can be done. I know I've got people here that are based in Melbourne, Sydney. We actually service the US, and we're just about to launch in Canada as well. And so regardless of where you are, we can do that remotely at the age of technology, believe it or not. So if you're not an existing StaffBerry client, I apologize if you're an existing StaffBerry client. If you are and you would like to review your strategy, please, actually, I'll make that available to you as well, obviously. So for everybody, so I feel like, Alan, you get a strategy session, you get an outsourcing consultation, you get a car, you get the gist. So if you got the opportunity there to take up a free 60-minute outsourcing consultation, I will send you an email. In fact, Kit will send you an email over the next 24 hours to follow up on that. And please, it's obligation free. It's not a pitch. It's designed specifically to help you map out your organizational plan and define those key roles to see if outsourcing can work for you. And if so, how? It's that simple. So guys, I want to say thank you for your time and attention. And I know chances are the fact that you're on this webinar means that your time poor. So I really appreciate that. Are there any questions? Are there any questions out there? We'll just wait, talk amongst yourselves. All right. Nope, doesn't seem to be. Okay, all good. I've either confused the hell out of you, or I've blown you away with that much information. So I'm going to take it as the latter. Of course, I'm available. Shoot me an email or ask Kit. Get in contact with us if you've got any questions about anything we've covered on this webinar and building your outsourcing strategy. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to connecting with you guys in the future. Take care and have a great Wednesday.